Guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Policy.
Yes.
How's everyone doing today?
Yankee Doodle, absolutely wrong. But it was our second favorite. Here's an assignment for you. Our favorite song for March was a song called Chester. And it is all but lost, I have been told, to your day and time. So there is something for you all to do, is to find out the words in the song Chester. Remember, during the early days of the war, we were fighting in New England, and that will explain some of the words that you hear. But let me ask you another question. You mentioned Yankee Doodle, madam. What are the words that you know? Tell me the song. Tell me the words. Yankee Doodle.
Went to town,
Went to town or went to London.
riding on a pony.
Riding on a pony.
Stuck a feather in his hat.
Stuck a feather in his hat.
Called it macaroni.
And that's the verse you know, is it correct?
Yes.
Would you be surprised, and I'm not joking now, would you be surprised to learn that that was an offensively derogatory verse that was written by the British and is as strongly anti-American as you can imagine?
Yes.
And that is the verse. Think about it now. Let me tell you what the verse means. Yankee Doodle was embodied by satirists in their cartoons in England by me. You see my height? Imagine me riding on a pony. Where would my feet be? Dragging on the ground. So that's the cartoons that they would make. Came to London town riding on a pony. He stuck a feather in his hat and he called it macaroni. Does anybody know what a macaroni is? It is not a soft, tasty pasta.
Place to go at club,
Well, there were the macaroni clubs in England. Macaronis were men and women who dressed completely ridiculously, ostentatious, very large wigs, makeup on their hair, on their faces, and very large hickory sticks with brass knobs and so forth and so on. And they walked around the city. They were almost like theatrical clowns. And so this is the verse that you know, and you need to me that you will not forget it, but you won't sing it anymore. There are hundreds of American verses. So perhaps these musicians will inspire you to do some additional research.
A demonym is a specific type of noun that identifies a group of people based on the part of the world they are from. I'm pretty sure everyone can have a demonym applied to them, and they are words we use on an incredibly irregular basis. Think of words like Mexican or Icelander. They're important words, don't get me wrong, but they can be pretty darn boring at times. So boring in fact that sometimes we forego using these words, instead use a nickname that nationality has acquired. A lot of the time these national nicknames are just diminutive forms of their proper names. Think Brits instead of British, or Aussie instead of Australian. Sometimes, however, they can be a bit more unique. Think of the likes of Kiwi for someone from New Zealand, Canuck for someone from Canada, or Tico/Tika for someone from Costa Rica. Sometimes these nicknames even surpass the official demonym in usage. Like, have you ever heard someone from New Zealand actually be called a New Zealander instead of a Kiwi? It's one particular national nickname we are looking into today, that being the nickname for people from the third most populated country on our planet, the United States of America, and their nickname of Yankee. And I can already hear people getting angry at me for that previous comment, as I implied that Yankee is a nickname that can be applied to all citizens of the United States of America, and that doesn't seem to be the case. From what I read online, it seems that people from outside the state use Yankee to refer to any American from any part of the state. However, within the nation, things get a bit more pedantic. Many Americans see Yankee as a name for just those in the north of the United States. The north in this case being the wider northeast area, not the Pacific Northwest or the more western border states. While some specify it to more just the New England region of the nation, some go as far as saying Yankee is a name that should only be applied to people from the state of Vermont. Nevertheless, it seems there's quite some debate about who can be called a Yankee. A poem by E.B. White, the writer of Stuart Little and Charlotte's Web among other things, put it best. To foreigners, a Yankee is an American. To an American, a Yankee is a Northerner. To a Northerner, a Yankee is an Easterner. To an Easterner, a Yankee is a New Englander. To a New Englander, a Yankee is a Vermonter, and in Vermont, a Yankee is someone who eats pie for breakfast. Pie for breakfast is apparently a traditional meal in the state, according to the aptly named Yankee chef. Yankee, or Yank as it's often shortened to, which by the way I'll probably be using a mix of in this video as and when, is more than just a geographic nickname. However, there is a stereotype linked to the name too. I saw this stereotype encapsulated in the term Yankee ingenuity. This term means to be invented and have technical know-how. It also means to have a mentality of making do with the tools and resources you have on hand. It seems to derive from those early settlers and colonists in the New England region who did just have to make do with what they could find in the land when they first arrived. The 30th US President, Calvin Coolidge, is seen as being a very stereotypical Yankee due to his blunt manner of speaking and dry sense of humour. This was very much seen as a positive thing, however. In the run-up to his election, a fellow member of his party said that his Yankee twang will be worth 100,000 votes.
Deriz. Ama eğer bize
While Calvin Coolidge might be an example of the name Yankee being used in a positive manner, this doesn't always seem to be the case. When looking into the name Yankee, a popular question comes up as to whether it's an offensive, derogatory name or not. This doesn't really seem to be a question of a simple yes or no answer. From what I read online, the name varies in offense depending on where you're using it and who you are saying it to. In other nations, Yank is seen as something as an affectionate / endearing term for those in the state, while apparently in the New England area the term is hardly used. I read it can even be quite patriotic to be called a Yankee, unless you're being called it in Boston, where it's really quite an offensive term, but that's a whole baseball thing. Calling someone from the southern United States a Yank, however, is a very different story, it would seem. Calling a southerner a Yank is a no-go because the name gained popularity as a word they would use as a derogative for northerners during the Civil War, so obviously wouldn't like to be called it themselves. This kind of creates this weird thing where it can be offensive depending on who is using it. In example, someone from the south calling someone from the north Yank is often derogative, while someone from say Britain calling someone from the north Yank isn't often derogative, though I must stress this is only from research I've done online. If you have first-hand experience with being called a Yank or calling someone a Yank, then let me know down below. And huge apologies if this name does offend you and I've been saying it left, right and centre. It seems that Yankee started life as a derogatory term, but has softened over the years, though its appropriateness has ebbed and flowed too, it would seem. Unsurprisingly, however, before Americans from the South were calling other Americans Yankee, it was the British who was first seemingly using the name. The earliest written recording of the name Yankee we have comes from 1758, while the USA was still a British colony. It comes from a letter written by James Wolfe, a British general. In the letter he wrote, "I can afford you 2 companies of Yankees, and the more because they are better for ranging and scouting, in either work or vigilance." It's thought this letter was in regards to sending more troops to the French and Indian Wars, in which Britain were wrapped up in over the time. It's hard to deter from this letter if the name Yankee is being used in a derogative sense here though, or if it's just being used as a go-to name. However, in 1775, it was most certainly being used in an offensive manner in a British loyalist newspaper cartoon, ridiculing the Yankee Doodle soldiers. More on that term in a moment. What's interesting, however, is that the name was being used by people from New England pretty soon after this. 1769 gave us the first Pennamite Yankee War. It seems that the Yankees in this war were quite openly calling themselves this name here, and as mentioned, Yankee Doodle went from being a song created by the British to insult the Americans to a marching song the Americans sung with pride.
As with a lot of older songs, the tune and music that we today associate with the Yankee Doodle was actually written much earlier than the 18th century. The melody may have been heard as early as the 1500s in Holland with rather nonsensical lyrics about the harvest and farmers receiving their wages in buttermilk. Over the next 2 centuries, that particular melody bounced around Europe and was reappropriated for various other jingles, like describing the struggles of English Puritans or used in nursery rhymes. For instance,
Lucy Lockett lost her pocket, Kitty Fisher found it. Nothing in it but the binding round it.
A rhyme that may or may not have been written before the tune started being used for Yankee Doodle. Another theory is that the Hessians were the ones who originally brought the tune to the colonies from Germany, where it was being used in a drinking song. Incidentally, the tune for Star Spangled Banner was originally used in a popular drinking song as well. Much like the origin of the melody, where the well-known lyrics came from is also not definitively known. Is that similar lyrics were first used to make fun of Oliver Cromwell, the 17th century English political and military leader, for fancying himself a fashionable person. The purported lyrics are sometimes said to have begun,
Yankee Doodle come to town upon a Kentish pony.
However, this seems unlikely considering the word Yankee didn't come along until years after Cromwell, with the first known documented instance appearing in 1683, used by Dutch settlers in New Amsterdam, today's New York, to disparage their English colonist neighbors in Connecticut. Stemming from the Dutch Janka, meaning Little John, Yankee was definitely intended as a belittling remark and became the European way to describe all American colonists, more or less being the equivalent of calling someone a country bumpkin, redneck, or dumb hick today. Incidentally, jaywalker is another term that originally had derogatory connotations, deriving from the insult jay, meaning more or less dumb hillbilly. The first known documented instance of the tune and the words Yankee and Doodle Dandy being put together in the same song, it seems, was around the 1750s during the French and Indian War. Prior to fighting for their independence against the British, the colonists were, of course, subjects of the English. Therefore, when the French and the Brits went to war over territories in the New World in 1753, the colonists were recruited to join in on the English side. Legend has it, whether true or not is anybody's guess, as no known hard, direct documented evidence has survived supporting this oft-told story that a British army surgeon named Dr. Richard Shuckburgh, who is known to have existed, saw the colonist recruits amble up to join the regular soldiers. Compared to the well-assembled and well-manicured English army, the colonists were a mess, wearing fashions that hadn't been seen in England in 100 years, and holding every weapon except those familiar to the fresh, well-drilled British troops. Dr. Shuckburgh couldn't help but laugh, and write a song. While not exactly the song we've come to know, the song that supposedly inspired Yankee Doodle, whether actually written by Dr. Shuckburgh or not, went like this.
Brother Ephraim sold his cow and bought him a commission, and then he went to Canada to fight for the nation. But when he came home, he proved an arrant coward. He wouldn't fight the Frenchman there for fear of being devoured. Sheep's head and vinegar, buttermilk and tansy. Boston is a Yankee town, sing hey doodle dandy.
The original sheet music for this song noted that the song should be sung through the nose and in the West Country drawl and dialect. In other words, it was meant to not only be mocking in lyrics, but tone as well. As for Brother Ephraim, this is thought to refer to a Colonel Ephraim Williams of the Massachusetts military, who ultimately was killed at the Battle of Lake George during the French and Indian War. Upon completing the lyrics, purportedly Dr. Shuckburgh gave it over to the Continental Marching Band, who played amid shouts of laughter in the English ranks. Whoever really wrote it, by 1768, the Boston Journal of the Times noted that the British were playing that Yankee Doodle song, though the Times didn't elaborate on what the lyrics were to this version. At this point, the song was constantly being remixed with slightly different lyrics, tunes, and meanings, as was common for pretty much all popular songs at the time. What united many of the earliest versions of this song was the not-so-subtle mocking of colonists as nothing more than moronic, unsophisticated country yokels. For instance, after George Washington was made commander of the rebel armies, some unknown individual wrote the following lyrics.
Then Congress sent great Washington, all clothed in parent breeches, to meet old Britain's warlike sons and make some rebel speeches. Yankee Doodle came to town for to buy a firelock. we will tar and feather him, and so we will John Hancock.
A slightly more familiar version to those of us today is also one of the earliest known versions, generally credited to Harvard sophomore and American Minuteman Edward Bangs.
Father, I went down to camp along with Captain Gooding. There we saw the men and boys as thick as hasty pudding. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy.
Continuing to turn the lyrics around, with the colonists variously either taking pride in the song and or directly mocking the British, we have lyrics like,
Yankee Doodle is the tune that we all delight in. It suits for feast, it suits for fun, and just as well for fighting.
Historians aren't completely sure when the verse about sticking a feather in his hat and calling it macaroni came to be. The oldest known print version of this didn't appear until all the way in 1842, published in London in the book The Nursery Rhymes of England by James Orchard Halliwell, though this particular lyric is obviously thought to date back to the American Revolution, partially due to the term being used here, which dates it somewhat, and how mocking the use of it was. Stepping back a little to a term related to macaroni, there's an interesting side tale about the evolution of the word doodle to one that's more used today, dude. According to esteemed etymologists Barry Popick and Gerald Cohen, dude was first used in the 1880s as a way to describe young New York City men who had an affinity for being flamboyantly well-dressed, well-manicured, and overly pretentious. In other words, a dandy. Using the very words that were used to mock colonists 100 years earlier, doodle dandy, people started to call these 19th century men that as well, as a means to essentially call them pretentious fools. Later, this got shortened to doodles, then to dudes. Eventually, the spelling was changed to dude, and if you're curious, the original female equivalent was dudine. Back to the related term macaroni. This term pertains to the habit of rich 18th century Englishmen going on so-called grand tours. Sort of like the more modern gap year, young adult men who could afford would take long trips around Europe, learning about the culture, art, and history of neighboring countries. Particularly those from new money would sometimes come back with more refined tastes, like an appreciation for French art, fancy exotic clothes, and Italian food. These individuals often over-the-top attempts at trying to appear refined upon their return, speaking a mix of Latin and English, and wearing foppish attire complete with massive macaroni wigs and not one, but 2 pocket watches, were occasionally mocked for this. One of the nicknames they were given at this time was macaronis. The individuals were also considered to be part of the informal macaroni club, and would refer to flamboyant fashion and the like as very macaroni. For the origin of the term itself, it's presumed to originally derive from the fact that macaroni was a relatively exotic food for the British, and must have been something at least some of these individuals raved about upon return to England. The Oxford magazine described the so-called Macaroni Club members in 1770 as follows. There is indeed a kind of animal, neither male or female, a thing of the neuter gender, lately started up among us. It is called a macaroni. It talks without meaning, it smiles without pleasantry, it eats without appetite, it rides without exercise, it wenches without passion. In the particular lyrics, stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni, were added to the Yankee Doodle song, the author was essentially saying that colonists were such low-class moronic fools that they thought by sticking a feather in their hat, they were being extremely refined and fashionable. In the end, there were possibly even hundreds of versions of Yankee Doodle in popular circulation during the American Revolution, some initially used by the British to mock their rebellious subjects. In turn, the Americans embraced the song, creating countless versions of their own, and other times simply taking pride in the lyrics, which were supposed to be mocking. This brings us to October 19, 1781, when General Cornwallis formally surrendered to American and French forces at Yorktown, Virginia. Legend has it, as a way to mock the defeated troops, famed French commander and hero of the American Revolution, Marquis de Lafayette, ordered the band to play Yankee Doodle, with the victorious soldiers singing along.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics.
All advanced advances on Redoubt 9, I advance on 10, with bayonets fixed and muskets unloaded.
Fall on above 20 men.
With your company in reserve, we can end this tonight, mon ami.
No, this is folly, my friend. Laurent's men were torn apart by the enemy full gas. We can expect many more such mortars embedded around their redoubts.
They will not hear us coming. They will not have time to light the fuses.
Your Excellency, we'll wait them out. We let our grand battery shell them from the field and our ships shell them from the sea until they break.
And how long do we wait? What if reinforcements arrive?
They don't have enough powder. For their mines, the Fugass. They may have made a show of it at the start, but they're running on reserves.
How do you know this?
Copper. While in the enemy camp, he observed that black powder was running low. Enough for a march, but not for a siege. They'll save what they have left for cannons, not mines.
Now or never. Deliverance must come. We attack the redoubts at nightfall.
Are we gonna attack at nightfall, guys? Join the fight. www.tommynationpolitics.com. It's time to be free-thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded about a lot of issues. Issues that we need to deal with. We can't kick the can down the road any longer. We need to confront our demons. Because that's the only way demons disappear. You know, I've learned this past year, maybe longer, this whole world is nothing but perspective. It's nothing but your man's trash is another one's treasure. Some people see things differently. Sometimes that helps you. Sometimes that hurts you. It's really hard to see objectively. How can you see objectively? You gather all the facts. You make informed decisions. You don't overreact. You keep cool, boy. Coolly cool. Like they say in West Side Story. Back before this empire, there was a Roman Empire. How did that Roman Empire end? Was it a fucking Senate? A Roman Senate? And then corruption? And then a pandemic? Or a famine? And unstable leaders who couldn't govern because of the inept corruption? Is that how Rome ended? No. No way. This in any way does not mirror Rome. In any way. You know, the Zealots in the times of those Roman occupations, they wanted a change. Nobody was going to give them a change. The social norms and conventional wisdom was Caesar. Well, render Caesar to what is due Caesar's, guys, but I think the best thing that we can focus on is ourselves. Because that's at least something that we can change. Before kingdoms change, guys, men must change. We have to stop status quo, up for our principles and values. We must say no to the puppets of the rich. And the puppets of the rich are the politicians, but the puppets of the rich are the partisans. Guys, there's a new macaroni in this motherfucking country. It's called partisan. It eats without fucking being hungry. It mouths without knowing the work points. It has illogical fucking brain activities. Its fear-mongering propaganda infects everyone. From the child in the educational system, to the minority in the projects, to the redneck in Alabama, to the pop star in Kentwood, Louisiana. This fucking conventional wisdom and social norms infects, guys. It infects us and it metastasizes and it drowns out our voices. What I say, guys? What I say? I say fucking no taxation without representation, bitches.
People think it's patriotic gibberish when they hear the most well-known version of Yankee Doodle Dandy. Yankee Doodle went to town a-riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni. We've all wondered why this guy is naming his hat feathers after pasta, but what most people don't realize is that Yankee Doodle Dandy was originally a British song making fun of American doodles, that's a word for simpletons, and the macaroni wasn't lunch. This was a macaroni. Macaroni was a catch-all term in England for the scenesters of the time who sat between the Restoration-era fop and the dandy on the historical timeline of trendy looks. They were called macaronis because when they left England, usually on mommy and daddy's dime, they toured Europe and brought back this totally amazing new pasta they discovered in Italy. It was, macaroni. So macaroni became the nickname for the pretentious elites of the 18th century and their fancy style. Macaronis didn't have MacBook Pros, but calling them hipsters of the time isn't far off the mark. The sad part is that the Americans wanted to be just like them. Americans like to think of themselves blazing their own path, but they still had a desire to import customs of elite society from England. That included fashion, and yes, they even thought macaroni was cutting-edge cuisine. That's the joke in Yankee Doodle Dandy, not that they were naming a feather, but that they thought a lame feather in their hat made them high society macaronis, which nobody should want to be in the first place. During early Revolutionary War battles, the British used the song to mock Americans, but Americans embraced a chance to throw it back at them. So when the British surrendered at Yorktown, the Marquis de Lafayette taunted them by playing Yankee Doodle as they walked away, and that secured its place as an unlikely anthem. So you're right to imagine something patriotic when you hear Yankee Doodle. Just make sure you imagine this when you hear macaroni. Some of these macaroni-loving
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics. Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today?
And joining us now for a reaction to the latest from the White House and Capitol Hill, Vermont Independent Senator and Budget Committee Chairman, Bernie Sanders. Senator, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being with us. I want to start with infrastructure. You've been clear that any bipartisan package on physical infrastructure is also to be accompanied by a larger, more progressive, much more expensive bill. A bill that could potentially pass, of course, only with Democrats' support through reconciliation. Do you think the more moderate members in your caucus are going to go for that two-step approach?
I do, and I'll tell you why, Andrea. I think every member of the caucus and almost all Americans understand that today we are living in a society where the very, very rich are getting phenomenally richer. Jeff Bezos is worth $200 billion, one person. Meanwhile, the working class of this country is struggling. You got 600,000 people who are homeless. You got parents who cannot afford childcare. And on top of all of that, we have to deal with the climate crisis, which I think every scientist is telling us is going to be devastating for this country and the entire planet. And we got to invest in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to sustainable energy and energy efficiency. So we have an enormous amount of work to be done. And at a time when the very rich and large corporations are often not paying anything or very little in taxes, they're going to have to pay their fair share so that we can protect working families in this country and deal with climate change.
Can we do it without a gas tax, a fossil fuel tax,
of course
which
you
the
can.
has ruled out? Okay. How do you do it? Is it just through changes in the tax law? And how do you do the changes in the tax law and bring the moderates along in order to,
look, everybody, if there's anybody in America who thinks that it's a good idea that literally multi-billionaires in a given year do not pay a nickel in federal income tax, I'd like to hear from them. Or they think it's okay that large profitable corporations making billions of dollars a year in profit don't pay anything in taxes. So I think what we need is a progressive tax system that says to the wealthy and large corporations, you're going to pay their fair share. Then we're going to invest in our roads and bridges. We're going to invest in transforming our energy system. We're going to invest, for example, in expanding Medicare. Right now, unbelievably, you got Medicare not covering dental care, vision, hearing aids, and we've got to do that as well. So all that I'm saying, and I think the American people agree, after years and years of worrying about billionaires and the rich, now it's time to have a budget that speaks to the needs of working families and the climate crisis that we face. That's what I'm trying to do.
Now to that breaking news overnight, President Biden ordering airstrikes near the Iraq-Syria border, targeting Iran-backed militias. The administration saying it's in retaliation for recent attacks. Rachel Scott joins us from the White House this morning with more. Good morning to you, Rachel.
Eva, good morning. And this is the second time that President Biden has ordered airstrikes in this region. We are told that this is meant to send a very clear and direct message to Iranian-backed militia groups that there will be serious consequences if U.S. forces continue to be threatened or attacked. Take a look at this video released overnight showing the moments these airstrikes were carried out. At this time, it's unclear if there were any casualties. Defense officials say the targets were 3 facilities behind recent drone attacks on American troops in Iraq. Now, the Pentagon is describing this as a defensive strike, calling it necessary to address the threat. But this escalation comes at a critical time when talks have been underway to see how to bring the U.S. and Iran back to that landmark nuclear accord deal that former President Donald Trump withdrew from. And these militia groups are already vowing revenge, saying that they will continue to target U.S. forces with.
Something military leaders will be watching closely. All right, Rachel Scott for us at the White House. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics. How's everyone doing today? Tommy Nation Politics.
President Biden has no immediate plans to travel to Florida, but on Friday he approved an emergency declaration and offered up federal aid to assist in the response efforts. It all comes as his administration and a bipartisan group of senators announced a long-sought infrastructure deal totaling over $1 trillion. The president said the deal reminded him of his days in the Senate.
To answer your direct question, we have a deal. I clearly didn't get all I want. They gave more than I think maybe they were inclined to give in the first place. But this reminds me of the days we used to get an awful lot done up in the United States Congress.
Let's bring in the man in the middle of it all, West Virginia Democrat, Senator Joe Manchin. Senator Manchin, thank you very much for joining us. So
everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.
We saw that moment, a rare moment, the kind of thing we hadn't seen in a long time at the White House, Democrats and Republicans talking about a deal. But obviously, there's been a lot of back and forth since then. So give me the bottom line. Is there a deal here that can get 60 votes in the Senate and that Joe Biden will sign?
I sure believe there is, John. But before I say anything about that, I want to say that from all of us in West Virginia, our hearts go out to all of the families in Surfside, Florida, for this horrendous, horrendous tragedy. I want them to know that our prayers are with them, and we're thinking about each and every one of them. So God bless. And let me just say this on the deal. Absolutely, John. This is the largest infrastructure package in the history of the United States of America, and President Biden, there's no doubt in my mind, never has been a doubt in my mind, that he is anxious for this bill to pass and for him to sign it. And I look forward to being there when he does. I can tell you there's so much good being done. And I would hope that all of my colleagues will look at it in the most positive light. They have a chance now to review it. It's got more in there for clean infrastructure, clean technology, clean energy technology than ever before. More money for bridges and roads since the interstate system was built. Water, getting rid of our lead pipes. It's connecting and broadband all over the nation, and especially in rural America and rural West Virginia. So much good in this, John.
But help me understand where Democrats exactly are on this, because we heard President Biden announce a deal. Then we heard him say that he would only sign it if the Congress also passed a much bigger infrastructure bill, the one that Bernie Sanders is working on, that he wants both in tandem. Now he's walked that back. But Nancy Pelosi has said that she's not even going to bring up your bipartisan bill unless this bigger Bernie Sanders bill also gets passed by the Senate. And listen to how Elizabeth Warren described her understanding of what's going on here.
I can't vote for some small subset that, the infrastructure train leaves the station and child care gets left on the platform. Green energy gets left on the platform. Billionaires don't have to pay, gets left on the platform. It's that all of the pieces have to move because ultimately it's one deal.
It's one deal. That's the way Elizabeth Warren sees it. It seems that's the way Nancy Pelosi sees it. So what is going on here? Are you sure progressives are going to support your bipartisan bill if they don't get a guarantee of something bigger also passing?
Well, I sure hope so. I hope they just look at the bill. We have two tracks, and that's exactly what I believe is going to happen. And we've worked on the one track. We're going to work on the second track. There's an awful lot of need, and everything they talked about is something that we need. John, I didn't vote for the 2017 tax cuts under President Trump. I thought they were weighted too much towards the high end, if you will. I think we need to make some adjustments, and I'm willing to step forward and make those adjustments. I've been very clear about that. But we also, John, have to take into account where we are in this country, what our debt structure is. We're $28.5 trillion. We cannot continue to add on things that we can't pay for. I've always said this, we're writing checks our kids can't ever cash. And this is going to put a heck of a burden on the next generation. So we have to be cognizant of that. But there's a lot of need out there, whether it be child tax credits, whether it be helping those kids have a start.
United rolling out a new flight plan, including a huge order of new aircrafts. And Phil LeBeau joins us now with a very special guest. Phil.
Thank you, Andrew. Scott Kirby, CEO of United Airlines, joining us here at the NASDAQ to discuss what is a huge day for the airline. Let's talk about the numbers overall. 270 new airplanes, 200 of them being 737 MAXs, the other 70s being Airbus A321 NEOs.
Right.
And
We're
you're also
fixing a lot of the human infrastructure that has fallen by the wayside of helping middle-class, hardworking people have a chance to get ahead and enjoy the American dream. I'm all for that. To what degree, we'll see what we're able to pay for.
So you know what Bernie Sanders is working on. He's talking about a bill that's $6 trillion. I know that you suggest that's a little rich for in terms of what you want.
Replacing your regional jets, most of them, with larger jets. What's the thought process here behind this decision?
Well, first, great to be here in person again.
Absolutely.
And seeing everyone. Really what we're trying to do is upgrade the whole customer experience. And the single seat 50-seat regional jets, are some of the toughest customer experience. And at United, we really needed to get that to be a world-class, first-class product. We have the best international product of any airline, in the country today. But upgrading our domestic experience for customers is really what this order is about. And while it's a big aircraft order, it's really about upgrading the customer experience with new airplanes, but also brand new interiors, the best interior, seatback entertainment, and all the amenities that we're going to put on the airplane.
What is your bottom line? How much more do you want? As you said at the top of this, the bill that you're negotiating with the Republicans would be the biggest infrastructure bill in the history of the United States. How much more are you willing to add on top of that?
Well, when you look at it, John, we've paid for all this. This is not going to be added to debt. The infrastructure bill that we've done in a bipartisan way has paid for us. We've used money that we've had. We've moved money that we had not used yet to make sure that it was used in the most productive way. I think we've all done a good job. And that's what we have to look for. And when we do the next piece of legislation, I understand the concerns, I understand the desires of everybody in my caucus and also on the Republican caucus. I know we can work together. Look what we've done. Look what President Biden has accomplished in 5 months. I've never seen this type of accomplishment in modern history. From a president coming in, the American Rescue Plan, $1.9 trillion. And then we do bipartisan bills. On top of that, the hate crime that we did 94-1. We just did the competition with China bill in a very bipartisan way. The endless frontier. So many good things, John. We can do. We can work this out.
But what's your bottom line? The question is, this is over $1 trillion.
The bottom line.
Bernie Sanders wants $6 more trillion.
Here's
what are you? How far are you willing to go?
Well, let me just say this, John. Right now, I never thought that the net corporate tax should have been 21%. I always felt 25 was very fair and balanced. So I'm willing to go to 25. I think that basically capital gains should be at 28%, not at 21. There's changes that we can make that still keeps us competitive. I'm not going to be supportive in voting for things that does not make us competitive. We're in a global economy. I want to make sure that we're the leader of the free world, that we can still compete, that we can still manufacture, create great jobs, and pay good salaries with benefits. That's what I want to make sure happens. Now, let's see when we do all that, make the adjustments, how much money do we have? This is how you run your household. It's how I run my household or our small businesses or large businesses. How much can we invest and how much return do we get on that investment? I want to make sure we pay for it. I do not want to add more debt on. So if that's $1 trillion or $1.5 or $2 trillion, whatever that comes out to be over a 10-year period, that's what I would be voting for.
Well, I think there's some real questions about whether or not this bill is truly paid for. But let me ask you about the bigger question here. You get hammered.
It should be, John.
You get hammered all the time, by fellow Democrats, especially progressives, who say you are constantly drawing red lines for what you'll support, and and creating limits on how far Democrats will be able to go now that you control all, the House, the Senate, and the White House. What do you say to those that say, why don't you draw some red lines with Republicans? Why don't you say, unless they come around and agree to the stuff you just talked about, bringing up the corporate tax rate again, some of the other issues, maybe voting rights, some of the other issues that Republicans are blocking, why don't you draw a red line and say, look, if you guys don't move on this, I'm going to go and endorse doing away with the filibuster. I mean, that's your leverage.
Well, John,
you are the man with the leverage.
First of all, and I don't wish this on anybody. John, I've not voted any differently than I voted for 10 years. I've always been very moderate, very centrist. I tell people I'm fiscally responsible and socially compassionate. I want to find that middle, and I think there's always a middle to find. It's the way I've lived my life. It's the way I've basically been in public life, and I'm not changing. I'm sorry that this 50-50 worked out and people were unhappy with it, but it is what it is. And if they think that I'm going to change and be something that I'm not, I won't. And I've been very clear. I'm willing to meet everybody halfway. If Republicans don't want to make adjustments to a tax code, which I think is weighted and unfair, then I'm willing to go to reconciliation. That's how you're able to do it. But if they think in reconciliation, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and go to $5 or $6 trillion when we can only afford 1 or 1.5 or maybe 2, and what we can pay for, then I can't be there. I'm very, very openly. And I think we can find our priorities. We can help a lot of people and lift them up. But people have to get up and make an effort too. We all have to be fighting for the same great a country that we live in, and so appreciative we're here. So I don't know what they're expecting, different than who I am and what I am, and they know me. I've been there for 10 years.
Well,
they know who I am.
Well,
and how I vote.
I think it's safe to say that you are probably the only Democrat that could have been elected to the Senate from West Virginia. So thank you very much. We appreciate you taking time to talk to us, Senator Manchin.
Well, I'm very appreciative to represent my great state of West Virginia. I can assure you of that. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
When you were at American Airlines, before you came over to United, did you realize as you were coming over to United, look, this is a bit of a sleeping giant. They've got a great network, but they also have the oldest fleet, and they frankly have interiors and an experience that is not living up to the competition?
Well, when I first went to United, I always knew that there was a ton of potential. And everyone in aviation thinks of United Airlines as this airline with lots of potential that never really realized it. But this has been a big part of it. We had to actually create the product that customers want. And that's really what this is about, is giving the customers the product that they want. Because we're already in the biggest cities in the country. Our hubs are in the best places in the country. But we needed to create the product that customers will choose to fly United Airlines.
You have the largest or the oldest fleet right now at more than 16 years for the average age of your aircraft. But you're going to be taking, what, one new plane on average every 3 days in 2023?
By the time we get to 2023, one new airplane every 3 days, which I don't know of any airline in history that's even come close to that. But this really is about, as we come out of COVID and as we have confidence in the future, being able to rapidly change the airline for customers.
You're not paying list price for these aircraft. I know people always say that. They're like, how much are they spending? The price would be somewhere around $35 billion. Clearly, you're not paying that much. But the critics will look at this and they'll say, this is an airline that already has heavy debt. And there are a lot of questions about how you're going to pay that back, in addition to whether or not business is going to come back, both in terms of corporate as well as international. What do you say to those critics?
Yeah, well, first on the second point, we believed, back in April of last year, we were unique, really the only ones that believed that business travel international would ultimately come back. Every data point as we've gone through the crisis makes that get stronger and stronger today. And today, it's an understatement to say I'm confident that business travel is going to come back. Business travel is going to come back. It's going to be a little bit different. Some of it will be people commuting instead of driving to work. There'll be things like that are different. But we've seen a huge acceleration even in the last few weeks.
And real quick, before I toss it to Joe, and I know you got a question, Joe, when you say business travel is coming back, where are we at right now, and when do you think that we're at more than or back to 2019 levels?
So we're down about 60% now. But literally 10 weeks ago, we were down close to 90%. That tells you something about the acceleration. And all the anecdotes we hear from customers is once we get to September, they're going to be back on the road, particularly for client-facing business. I don't think business travel comes back to 100% probably until 2023, but I think we have a big step and increase in September, another one in January when people have budgets again, but we absolutely think coming back 100%.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
What's your problem?
Domination Politics. Welcome to Domination Tuesday. It's the Yankee Doodle Dandy time. Time for a little Yankee Doodle Dandy. There's been some disturbing developments throughout the course of last week, which kind of wraps my entire topic together with a bunch of other things. What other things did you possibly ask? Well, basically, wars. So you'll never forget that in 1776 maybe black people. We were there on the ships, but the American people were fighting for their freedom from a tyrant, from a King George III. Guys, instead of it's like we've all come because instead of fighting for freedoms, guys, we are attacking defensively military targets in other countries, thousands and thousands of miles away. Case in point, guys, our airstrikes in Syria and Iraq. This is amazing, guys. What's going on? What's going on with this?
U.S. forces coming under attack from multiple rockets overnight in Syria. It follows President Biden's airstrikes at pro-Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq. All of this coming as Congress considers overturning the authorization for the use of military force in Iraq from the 9/11 era. Joining me now is Congressman Michael McCaul, ranking member on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, good to talk to you. So these attacks over the weekend, early Monday morning, our time, or their time rather, were designed to take away these militias' ability to attack U.S. forces. Clearly, they weren't that effective.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the biggest threat in the region now to our soldiers and our embassy are these Iran militia proxies that are in Syria and in Iraq. President Biden took out several of them about 2 months ago, and just recently as well. And so it is, when you talk about authorized use of military force, the Democrats repealed the 2002 AUMF, which President Trump used as authorization to take out Qasem Soleimani, the mastermind of terror, for 2 decades in the region, which was highly effective against the Iranian forces in the IRGC. So I think what they're doing is taking power away from Congress and giving it all to the president under Article 2. I hope it doesn't pass the Senate.
Yeah, these attacks were also meant to be a deterrent against future attacks, and not just take away their ability to do it, but say, you better not, or we're going to strike you again. Right. Pentagon spokeswoman Jessica Minolti saying, quote, "We seek to make clear to Iran and Iran-backed militia groups that there will be serious consequences if they continue to attack or arm, fund, and train militia groups that attack our people."
I think they already know there's going to be serious consequences, idiots.
Well, I don't think they will. I mean, I think
so. Just like clockwork, guys. Just like clockwork. It seems that we're back into the mire. Don't forget that we assassinated General Soleimani, their second in command. We did in the Trump administration. They ended the they ended the conflict, guys. Never in a million years have we ever ended a goddamn conflict without violence. The only time we ever end conflicts is when we drop atomic bombs. God, these Iranians are smart. They know that there's going to be consequences if they fuck with us. That's why they fucking bombed an empty building somewhere to look good and to make sure that we didn't have any ammunition anywhere. Because our warmongering mainstream media and our warmongering president are insane. They know no bounds of peace. And they know no bounds of truth. They know no bounds of justice, guys. It's been a hard week for us free-thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded motherfuckers.
So much death. What can men do against such reckless hate?
Now, guys, today, this is the CNN. This is the Clinton News Network. This is the Clinton News Network, guys. So they think it's good. This is a good thing. Because otherwise they wouldn't report it. Biden orders airstrikes against facilities used by Iran-backed militia groups. Biden orders airstrikes against facilities used by Iraq militia groups, guys. Iran-backed militia groups. Regulated militia. We hate that shit. Well, CNN, President Joe Biden directed military forces to conduct a defensive precision airstrikes against facilities used by Iran. So, guys, this is the epitome of changing the language. Just to let y'all know. Defensive precision airstrikes. So, think about this, guys. What is a defensive maneuver? It's when someone's attacking you on the offensive, right? And you have to maneuver defensively, right? We maneuver defensively fucking airstrikes in Iran militia-backed facilities. Does that sound like a defensive maneuver? Is it a defensive? This language the Democrats use is bullshit, to say the least. What's even more disturbing, guys, is the Republicans seem to be going along with this. Fine, they love the war mark. Did you just hear that fucking guy from Texas? He's supposedly one of our representatives. These Democrats and Republicans aren't cahoots. They've just bought an enormous amount of aircrafts from Boeing, largest order ever. It's disturbing. I'm gonna be checking in with my guests and see what they think about these developments, and I'm checking in with you. What do y'all think? Before you answer, guys, remember, be free thinking, innovative, and totally open-minded. No partisan politics, guys. You know, there's two giant gang-banging organizations in this country, and it's the Democrats and Republicans. If you're using your gang language on my live stream, that's probably the only way you go off. Say anything you want to say, guys, but I swear to God, if I start to hear fucking Mueller report or the fucking dossier, if I start to hear fucking Benghazi on my live stream, I swear to God, I will not hesitate to end you immediately right there. Just a warning. And why? Well, because I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, and Yankee Doodle do or die. Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a Boeing. I am that Yankee Doodle guy. No, I'm not.
Yeah!
But guys, hey, if I were you, I'd invest some money in Boeing and Raytheon. Because Biden's using those guys. He's using his guys. He's using his dealers at the war trap house. God only knows what we're doing next. God only knows what the CIA is doing next. Why don't they spend a little bit of time fucking trying where this fucking pandemic came from? How about you do that, CIA? And no more timber sycamores, and no more Iraq weapons of mass destruction, and no more defensive maneuvering airstrikes. I'm a dimension-riddle little man. I fucking sign everything the CIA tells me to sign. And if Joe Biden really believes that the CIA doesn't know where this pandemic came from, somebody should play the fucking record player night when the kids are asleep. That's all I have to say. Let's check in my guest. My first guest is gonna be Andy Kennedy, and we'll see what he has to say about all of these developments. He's in Canada. Hello, Andy. Yeah, I'm pretty much that says it all, guys. So that was the news for the week. Can you believe it was the week, guys? The freaking week. We've had a lot happen to us this past 2 days. I saved so much time with. But if you save so much time with Lander, maybe this rotten, crazy world isn't good. But you may call them Democrats. You may call them Republicans. I think that you guys are kind of insane. But maybe in perspective, you do not have my brain. But we're a brotherhood of men. We're a benevolent brotherhood. of man. Oh, aren't you proud to be in this fraternity? A benevolent brotherhood of man. Our lifelong membership is free. Keep giving each brother all you can. Oh, aren't you proud to be in this fraternity? A benevolent brotherhood of man. So guys, we might be going to war, and maybe we should all freak out about it, but what would that do, I guess? Maybe we should just focus on doing progressive things, being free, thinking innovative, and open-minded, guys. Or otherwise, I hate to see what happens after this. But no matter what happens, remember, we're united, and there is no way that we can truly be divided, 'cause we're a brotherhood of man. A benevolent brotherhood of man. Oh, aren't you proud to be in this fraternity? A benevolent brotherhood of man. So you can never get fired from this brotherhood, and our membership is free. So is the membership to Tommy Nation Politics. Make sure you watch us every Tuesday, 8 Central Standard Time, because we're a brotherhood of man. A benevolent brotherhood of man. Oh, aren't you proud to be in this fraternity? A benevolent brotherhood of man. Yeah, that was the Yankee Doodle Dandy. Now you know what a macaroni is. Now you know what Joe Biden's doing. Now you know what Yankee Doodle can mean. It can mean anything. To anyone. About anything. It's perspective, guys. Not perspective. Transfer of wealth. Real trickle-down economics, guys. See what that is? Seizing the means of production. Look it up. It works. Oh, guys. Thanks for watching Domination Politics. See you next Tuesday.